So today we're going to start painting our zebra painting. And whenever we work with acrylics, we always want to work background to foreground. So we start with our farthest back thing, which is the sky. Then we would progress to these mountains, and then to these hills, and then to the zebra, and then to the grass very last. So always background to foreground. We're going to need our disposable palettes, our paint brushes, paper towels, water, and our acrylic paint. So the first thing we want to do is the sky. So we can go ahead and use these class sets of acrylic because the sky is pretty big and I don't want you to use your full sets up just on this one project. So I'm just getting some cerulean blue, some light blue, and some white. And I want to start out by mixing 3 different colors of blue: a dark blue, a medium blue, and a light blue. Skies are always dark at the top and they're getting lighter as we go towards the bottom. Now these colors may be a little bit bright on its own. Our painting, we kind of wanted some duller colors. So in order to make a color duller, we add the opposite color, its complementary color on the color wheel. So blue and orange are complementary colors. And we just need the tiniest bit of orange, goes a long way. I'm going to end up using my biggest flat brush to do this area. So we use flat brushes to paint bigger areas, so I can go ahead and start mixing my colors with my flat brush. So mostly dark blue, a little bit of this lighter blue. And to dull it up, just the tiniest corner of orange. I can always add more if I need to add more, but it's hard to correct it if you accidentally add too much right away. It's looking a little duller. Then for our second color, it's mostly this light blue, and I'm kind of just using what I had on my brush, twirling my brush to really get that darker color out. Again, let's add just a tiny bit of orange just to dull it up a little bit. Then I'm going to take some white, and I have enough of that blue on my brush still where I can tint it to make it a lighter blue. And again, dull it up a tiny bit with just a corner of orange. So with acrylic, since it dries so fast, we always pre-mix our colors. I'm twirling it off my brush to make sure it stays on my palette. Then, since I'm using a similar color scheme, and I want to work relatively fast for this step, I'm just going to wipe my brush off with a paper towel. And when we blend acrylic, we always start with our darkest color. So I'm going to take a pretty thick pile of paint. And I always have newspaper down on my desk so I can paint the edges. So I want to do a stripe of this dark blue. I want to make sure I have enough paint where I'm getting in all these little crevices of the stucco medium that's already down. Since I want to work fast, I'm just going to wipe my brush quickly on a paper towel, then pick up a big scoop of this medium blue. Again, I'm making sure it goes in all of the little crevices of the stucco medium. And once I have a stripe down, I'm gonna wipe my brush real quick. Again, I'm not washing it, I'm just wiping it. And then I want to go back and forth in a horizontal motion, blending these two colors before they dry. And then I wipe my brush real quick. I'm going to move on to my lightest color. And I'm going to fill in the remaining spots of the sky. It's okay if we go over the mountains a little bit. The great thing about acrylic is that you can layer it on top of each other. So again, I want to make sure all the little crevices are filled in first. Wipe my brush. And then again, go back and forth in a horizontal scrubbing motion. Until I get a nice blend where my sky is dark at the top and light at the bottom. And now that I'm done with my sky, I can go ahead and rinse my brush for a second. Our next step is to paint these back mountains. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of violet and I'm going to add it to the blue sky color that I already mixed. So this will help it make it look like the mountains are more in the distance. The more that the color that we make for the mountains is similar to the sky, the farther away that they'll look. So we really want to create that atmospheric perspective where things in the background look farther away and things in the foreground look closer. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit of violet out on my palette. And I can start adding just a little bit to these excess colors. So I always like reusing the colors on my palette. That'll make it look like my painting has a more cohesive color scheme. And it'll just help it so I don't waste paint. So we also want it to make it look like the light source is coming from one direction. So my light source is coming in from this direction. So you can see that the mountains are darker on the right-hand side and they're lighter on the right-hand side. So I'm using kind of a broken color technique where I'm just going to dab on lots of color. So lots of little brush strokes. Try not to go on the zebras, but if you do, it's not the biggest deal. Can get some white, get it even lighter on this right-hand side, or left-hand side, I mean. Go back to dark on the right-hand side of this mountain. And so by dabbing in different colors, it looks more like rocks or ridges in this mountain. And we just want to make sure all the little spots from the stucco medium are really filled in good. And again, darker on the right-hand side. getting lighter on the left-hand side. Once I have that layer down, I could wipe my brush off real quick and take some pure white and go on top. And it's okay if it's still a little wet underneath. This will help it kind of mix better too. And this will just help that light source stand out a little more. We can bring these ridges down. So this mountain looks like it's in front of that mountain as well. There we go. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. We're going to continue that broken color technique down to these hills. So you'll see we want it to start looking a little bit more green, a little bit darker, a little bit more vibrant as we're going towards the foreground. So we're gonna add some yellow ochre. We're still gonna keep that violet. We're gonna get some greens and some browns in there. So let's go ahead and we'll add some of our browns. So we want some burnt sienna. We'll have some phthalo green. Let's use some of our yellow. And I already have some purple out. And again, we're kind of gonna mix on top of our blues to get a more cohesive palette. So again, I always pre-mix my colors. Some nice browns. Some various greens. I can add some purple or some brown to it. I can dull it up a little bit more. A little bit of brighter greens. I can add some yellow, but I'm still kind of dulling it up with this purple and white mixture that I had underneath. And maybe let's add a little bit of light green as well. That's looking a little bright. Still that with a little bit of orange or violet. Okay, now that I have a few different colors, I can again start to do that broken color technique. So I'm just randomly dabbing this color on the hillside. I'm gonna make sure we get in between the zebra's legs and switch to a darker color. Gonna dab on top. Add some browns in there. More yellow browns. In there. I can start kind of forming a hillside more cleaning up the top edge. And then let's get a little bit more violet color in there. And I just want to make sure now I'm kind of spot checking, going back in, filling in the spots between the zebra's legs, filling in any holes that were created, any white spots that are left. If I need to switch to a smaller brush, when I'm going in between the zebra's legs, I can do that. So I'd rather you paint right up to and over the zebra a little bit than accidentally leave some white spots around the zebra. And then just like our mountains, I'm gonna add some white to one of my kind of green, yellowy colors, one of my lighter colors. And I just want to make these hills have a little bit of a highlight on that left-hand side as well. That'll give it more of a sense of a light source. The next step we're going to do is paint this a solid brown, and then we're going to be able to dry brush on top of it to add these lighter and lighter areas. So we just want burnt umber, a very, very dark brown. Flip my palette around. If you want, you can add a tiny bit of burnt sienna to it if you want to have a tiny bit of a red color. Washing and drying my brush, or getting my brush out of the water. Mix these together. And you can paint kind of up and down and side to side. We just really want to make sure we fill in all those little white spots. So we want to get in all those grooves. So you need a decent amount of paint on your brush in order to do that. And I'm just kind of lightly going over the grass, so if it's still wet, it'll make a little bit of a blend. If it's dry, it'll create a dry brush effect, which will help blend it out. More paint. My brush real quick and try to kind of dry brush or blend out the top a little bit just to soften that edge so it's not so harsh. And then we really need to wait for this part to dry until we can move on to our next steps. So with acrylic, you can always blow dry it. or we can wait until it naturally dries for next class. And we will continue step 2 after it's dry.